Here's something that nobody tells you when you're scaling your clinic to multiple locations. The meta ads that filled your first location may not work the exact same way in your second, third, and even fourth location. And if you don't understand what changes, you may possibly lose money and time when trying to scale meta in multi-locations. Today I'm gonna show you exactly what shifts when you're going from 1 to 3 or more locations so that you can sustainably and successfully open locations without running into these traps. And if this is your first video with us, we'd love to welcome you into the channel. We put out videos twice a week talking about the strategies, tactics, and ideas about how to scale clinics to $200,000 a month. Now we've done this in brick and mortar and telehealth. And so what we do is we take these lessons and we bring them back to you on the channel. We've had clients as high as $2 million a month as of current. And so we are able to take all the lessons from those clients and all of our other single clients and ultimately bring those to you in real time. And our intention is simple. We hope that you watch these videos. We hope that you grow your business. And maybe someday you'll consider choosing Clinic Growth Accelerator as a partner to help drive your advertising to an even higher level. So if you're joining us for the first time, again, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, we appreciate you being here. We're going to multi-locations today, talking about how to scale meta from one location to multiple. Let's begin. The very first thing that changes when you're going to multiple locations is budgets. So if you think about it, when you first begin your journey, you have your single location. And location number one is getting all the budget. Now, once you start having a portfolio of locations, you will have budgets for the whole company, and you'll also have budgets per individual location. Now, what you want to do here is you want to start thinking about yourself as a portfolio owner. Now, how does the portfolio individual think as compared to just a single location partner? Well, the portfolio individual knows that these two offices up here are likely going to have different statistics. And one location is probable to have a higher CAC than the other. So what the novice people do is they don't do any sort of budget adjustments. They say, okay, we have these two locations, they both do the same volume, so we're gonna spend the exact same amount of money on ads. But here's the challenge with that, is the portfolio investor, they care, yes, about the individual, but they care about the whole. They care about the entire group of businesses that are working together. And so the portfolio investor, when they have 3 clinics, they're not afraid to take some money over here in a clinic that's not doing as hot on meta and re-dump it into a market where the return might be substantially higher. So when we look at our clients that have multi-locations and you go through all their locations inside of the campaigns, it basically never are they running the exact same amount of money. And that's because of 2 reasons. Number one is the return. So some locations just get like a better return in general. Some markets are better, there's less competition, they buy faster, they show up more frequently. So they just have a higher ROI in some markets. Now the other reason that there's different budgetary constraints is because not every clinic is at the same level of revenue. So some clinics might be brand new and they might have to be scaling up to the next level versus some might be more established. So what the portfolio investor does that has multi-locations is they look to see what are all my stats at each location per channel. So if you imagine this, we'll go back to the 3 locations yet again. You have 3 locations, and within these 3 locations, you are doing meta, maybe you're doing community, and maybe you're doing some internal, like referral events, stuff like that. And you're looking at what is your CAC for all of these per location. And as a result, some locations, maybe location 1 has a great meta CAC. Maybe location 2 has a good community. Maybe location 3 is doing pretty fair on all of them. So the sophisticated portfolio advisor, they will pump more money to the locations that do better with certain channels. So if number 1 does better than number 2 on meta, we might pump more meta spend on number 1, and we might put a little bit more investment in the number 2 into the community and internal. So the portfolio investor is always aware that there is different channels at their disposal in terms of getting new patients, and then they properly allocate budget to the clinics that are doing well on certain channels. And more importantly, they also try to model what's working at other clinics in the clinics that are not doing as hot in terms of performance. So the biggest thing to think about when it comes to these three is just understanding the portfolio mindset of that we need the whole portfolio to grow. We're not emotional to one channel at each location. We're just gonna look at the data from all of our channels at every location, and we'll try to capitalize and invest more into the thing that is working on an individual level. And as a result, the whole portfolio will continue to grow. Now, the next thing that's super important, number 2, is single campaign will not cut it. So single campaign is no good. Now, why is this? Because, okay, let's say we are in Milwaukee. You have a campaign number 1, your first clinic's in Milwaukee. And then maybe you open a clinic just outside of Milwaukee in a place called Brookfield. Well, if you say, hey, listen, dude, I'm going to run one single campaign for both of these markets just because they're fairly close in nature, what you're going to find is that if you blanket one campaign and you have 1 and 2 locations being promoted in the same campaign, you're going to see your cost per lead go up and your cost of acquisition go up. And why is that? Because each one of these markets has unique language. You're going to find that campaign number 1 will respond better to Milwaukee callouts. You'll find campaign 2 responds better to Brookfield callouts. And if you try to like put them all in one campaign and just call out like the greater Milwaukee area, you are likely to see a decrease in performance. Instead, if you were to say, hey, listen, we have location 1 and location 2, each one of these we're going to have a campaign, an ad set where we do targeting, and then ads. And we're going to do that for both of these. And as a result, we can be more specific with our targeting, we can be more specific with our messaging, and when people go to actually opt in on the page, they're going to be able to see that the location is close to them because we were able to be more exact in our targeting. Again, we have clients that have as high as 30 locations. So what they do, if you go into their ads manager, they have campaigns running for each location. So L1, L2, L3, right? They have campaigns running for all of these because it allows to be specific. It also allows them to match the budget. So if you do one centralized campaign, it's hard to know how much budget is getting distributed to each location versus if you do individual campaigns per location, you can control the budget on a daily basis to that specific location, and you can scale it and decrease it accordingly depending on how the business is doing and the results. And so being specific is extremely important when you're scaling multi-location. The generic brand campaign is not going to work as well as the specific location campaign, especially if you're running a local business. Now, this breaks down a little bit, especially if you're doing like, telehealth, in which case you don't really have brick and mortar locations. So you're kind of just scaling up the demographics. If you're doing telehealth, that's something that you could do in one single campaign. And I would recommend having different campaigns per offer that you run. But in the sake of brick and mortar, once you start scaling to multiple locations, you are going to want to have separate campaigns to be specific and control budgets within. Now, number 3, one of the most important pieces, creative volume. Your creative volume must go up. So right now, if you have the single location and you're running 5 to 10 ads per week, you typically cannot run the exact same 5 to 10 ads. You might be able to use some of the same creative, but you're going to have different copies to be able to call out the different demographics in the area. So your workload, this is what true scaling looks like. You now have to scale out your creative team. Your team has to be able to produce more ads per unit time. That is scale. Scale is basically taking something that already works and multiplying it out, multiplying locations, multiplying ad creatives. So like if you're looking at this like it's more work, well, you're absolutely right, it's more work, because now that we have these 2 locations, we might be able to run similar style images and videos, but we are going to have unique copies and callouts. And typically LPs, copy callouts and LPs. So that way we can, again, achieve the specific messaging that's required for high-level conversion. And so at the end of the day, more locations equals more creative volume required. That should be an expectation for you, though, because you're a savvy business owner, and you know that when you want to do anything at a higher level, it comes with more work and more responsibilities. But that doesn't mean that you can't be extremely affluent and actually delegate all of that stuff to different people on your team as you scale. You can for sure do that. But to say that it's not going to come with more work from someone would just not necessarily be in alignment with reality. So each location is going to need creatives every 2 to 3 weeks max to actually keep these campaigns fresh. And you don't want to be fooling and acting like, hey, we're just going to run the same creative over and over and over for a location. Like, that's just not going to work. You got to follow ad fatigue overcome protocol. So that just because you expand locations doesn't mean you're immune to ad fatigue, dude. Get your game on. And now the last piece, number 4, is tracking and conversion. This is the most important part. Tracking and conversion. If you have one clinic, then you have an easy tracking system. You can track your cost per lead, you can track your cost per show, you can track your customer acquisition cost, all in one central place. And so at one location, this stuff is easy, my friends, because you're just tracking one thing, one business. Now, when you start multiplying and you have location 1 and location 2, now you have to have individualized tracking. Because remember, we're not going to do like a blanket campaign that has 1 and 2 all within. We're going to be savvy, and we're going to run one campaign with 1 and one campaign with 2. So as a result, we need to be able to see the individual data for each location, your cost per lead, your cost per schedule, cost per show, your CAC. You need to be able to track all of these per location, because if you blanket it, okay, it becomes a little bit more challenging to delineate the lead flow. Now, the only way to successfully blanket this, and I still recommend you having different targeting, but sometimes here's how we run it for larger clinics, is we'll have 1 location, 2 location, 3 location. All of these are going to have separate ads and targeting. So separate ads and targeting, that way we can get the messaging specific like we talked about earlier. But then sometimes what we do is we'll run them all to a central LP. So they'll all basically run to one landing page. And you might say, well, that's interesting, because how are you going to know what location they come from? Well, good question, because in the landing page, what we'll do, it's actually an application. So they fill out a little application to book an appointment, and part of the application is they're going to give us their zip code. And then what we're able to do then is we're able to know, okay, we're running ads in this zip code, and this zip code, and this zip code. Okay, now based on the application, at the end of the month, we had X number of leads that were in zip number 1, we had X number of leads that were in zip number 2, and X number of leads that were in zip number 3. Now, as a result, we can then start to reverse engineer the customer acquisition cost as well, because if we delineate by zip code, then we can track all the way down to the customer acquisition cost for all 3 of these. So by able to delineate, and I'm telling you guys, you do not want to have centralized data for everything. You need to be able to go into your campaigns and be able to say, this location is getting this amount per lead, this amount per show, this amount cost of acquisition, and here's what our bottleneck is for this location. At this location, we're getting these results, and this is our bottleneck over here. Because if you don't have that individualized data, when you go to assess the bottleneck at each spot, you might be left with subpar data, which makes it pretty tough to actually make like a good decision on this kind of stuff. So the reason you have individualized data is because every business is going to have a different linchpin. You might have one business that's really good at follow-up, really good on the phones, and not so good at sales. So you have to work on sales with them. You might have another location that's really good at sales, gets a ton of leads, but their show rate is crappy. So now you know as the leader what to work on at each location by having individualized statistics. Especially if you plan on scaling to a lot of different locations, like you just can't blanket everything. The brand remains consistent throughout all of these, but the data is all individualized so that we can actually work on the business to improve each location's lynch point. So as a quick summary for you guys on things that you have to be concerned with when you plan on going to multi-locations. Number 1 is your budget, allocation. Think about it from a portfolio standpoint. Don't become emotional that every place needs to spend the exact same amount. Scale the locations that are doing well, and then find other traffic sources that put resources and time into for the other locations. It's also going to be dictated on capacity, current revenue, all that kind of stuff. Second thing is creative volume. Okay, so your creative volume, you have to have more creatives. You got to have more, if you have more locations, it's more work. You have to overcome ad fatigue. You have to change out creatives. You have to have separate call outs. You have to have separate landing pages. Okay, so you have to have more creative volume, which leads into number 3, which is campaign or individualized. So campaign is individualized, which means that you are running one campaign per location, which allows you to then control your budget, control your messaging. Inside of your creative, you can have more specific call outs. The more congruent it is for a local business, the more response that particular business will get, because it feels like it's actually for the person in their neighborhood rather than just some large corporate brand. Now, number 4, the last piece, is conversions and tracking. You want to be able to track all your stuff all the way through your cost per lead, all the way down to your customer acquisition costs. I should be able to know what these are at location 1. I should be able to know what these are at location 2 and location 3. They should not all be blanketed together, although you may look at that as a portfolio investor. What is my blended cost of acquisition for all 3 of these? But you still need to be able to pull it out on a granular basis, because when you have the granular data, again, it allows you to identify the bottleneck at each location in order to make objective decisions about what you and your team should be working on in those spots. Because not every location is going to be the same. Some are going to struggle with sales, some are going to struggle with lead flow, some will struggle with conversion on the phone. You have to be able to become aware of that and then coach your team of leaders to ultimately improve those bottlenecks in the business to improve the results. So without having all the individual tracking, you're literally just like guessing and checking on what's working at a macro level. But as a result, you may break something that's already working in one clinic just to try to fix something that's not working in another due to negligence and performance issues. So by having the tracking overall, you can blend the data together easy, but it's hard to take the data and make it individualized at the end unless it's set up that way. So my recommendation on number 4 is have individualized data, but then have mechanisms in place that do portfolio summaries of everything entirely. So that's where you would see like your total CAC for all locations, total ad spend. So it's easy to take all of your individual data and make it central. It's hard to take all central data and make it individual. So guys, I hope that's helpful. That's all the ideas to consider, or at least a handful, when you're scaling the multi-locations from one single location. If you have any questions on these, feel free to book a call with us. We typically will leave a link in the comments or in the show notes below for you to grab a time with us. If you want us to come in and help you with financial model, maybe you're planning on going to multiple locations, we can come in, we can share some ideas on our track record of helping clinics scale to upwards 30 locations or more. So I hope you guys got this, found this valuable. We'll be putting out trainings twice a week on Wednesday and Sunday. So I'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Make sure you guys take action on the stuff. If you want to have a quick call with us, grab a call and the link below inside the show notes. Until then, take care, friends. Cheers.